Hello guys, this is Crowborn Chaos, and welcome back to another video. Today is another deck list, though, but this one's going to be unusual. Mainly because this one has well, to put it simply, this deck, the extra deck for this deck can literally be whatever your heart contents. It's mainly Link and Synchro Span, so I won't be showing you the extra deck for this, because one, the extra deck that I have for this right now is not complete. Don't have all the cards I want for it, but the main deck is where where it really does shine. And I will note that there are cards in here that you can trade out and swap and go for, which I encourage entirely, because this deck, there's just a few core principles to the deck that just make this phenomenal. I would count it as like a cheesy anti-meta deck. I currently don't have an official name for this deck. Well, it's not true, but I have a cheesy name for it. It's not any cool sounding. Unfortunately, it's not cool. So I call it TikTok Boom. And yeah, it's corny and cheesy, and you'll definitely wonder, why the fuck is it named that? Look, I just needed a quick name on the fly, and so that's what I told my friends it's called, but I haven't actually given it an official name. So let's get into this deck profile. You'll find it's actually quite interesting. And yeah, forgive me, I'm doing this all with one hand on the phone, one hand. No. So we have here 3 Soldier Dragons. This card is a key playmaker in your duel. Pretty much once per turn, a soft once per turn, quick effect. If your opponent activates a card or effect, special summon 1 level 2 or lower dragon monster from your deck. Well, guess what? It searches itself. And since it's a soft once per turn, if it goes off, you can get another one. And then you can build off into more combos like that. Like, you don't even care if your opponent's playing Pop or Banish or whatever. Your opponent's going to establish their build, and you're going to establish your board pretty easily too. And 3 of these is just great deal in general. This deck is actually pretty fast, is deceptively fast, and very consistent. Next up is 3 Sniffer Dragons. Pretty much, this is just adding to Soldier Dragon's effect, so you can, once you have expended all your Soldier Dragons, you can then go for Sniffer Dragon, which is going to get you in more search, and then you can just continue. It's going to thin your deck out, which is great. And it's also gonna just put another something on the board, and then you can go for link spamming plays or synchro plays if you got a tuner. It really, you're just putting all of these seemingly small monsters onto the field, and then just exploding from that. Next up, we have 2 Giant Rat and a Zombina. And the reason why these are in here is because practically when they die outside of card effect, well, except for Zombina. Zombina, if she dies by battle or card effect, she can search literally any of those. She can search Giant Rat, which, you know, your opponent's attacking, your opponent trying to attack through you is often going to be hell for them, mainly because if they swing into a Giant Rat, well, he will search another Giant Rat. They have to swing through that, well, then they have to go to Zombina. They try to swing with that, well, then you can search, well, any of your, Soldier Dragons. And if not, you can always also extend your play by searching this little guy, the Self-Destruct Ant. Self-destructant, I know it looks like it's a weird choice, but to be honest, it's part of the mind game of this deck. Burning your opponent for 1,000 when it's when it's destroyed, and it doesn't matter if it's by battle or by card effect. Just your opponents, especially with the new rule changes, your opponents just always can be slightly annoyed by it. But they don't. But you see, when you're using this, they don't your opponent's not going to understand the bigger game that you're playing here. This is just to help facilitate, get you slightly closer to your win goals. Because you will basically, you don't really care about your own life points, really. As long as you have life points, you're just going to go. Also, your opponent's never going to know what you set. And like I said, your opponent attacking into this and they taking 2k while you take 1k, you're going to chip through their life points pretty fast. With the new rules, you can also score some wins cheesily. Yeah, I know it's a dirty play, but it's not the only thing that your opponent has to worry about with this deck. You see, your opponent's always going to think you're playing some sub-tier stall deck while you're playing these, which is why I like it, because your opponent's always going to underestimate you while you're doing. 2 Marshmallons for more permanent kind of ways. Permanent thing right now. It's it also does 1,000 burn damage when flipped. Then it can't be destroyed by battle, which just makes your opponent more annoyed. Yeah, they can destroy it with card effects, but you don't care if that happens either, because you're not truly trying to bank on a stall. What you're trying to do here is you're just delaying just enough to get your combo pieces, which you should get pretty fast, considering that this deck thins itself pretty well. And like you should be able to build your link and synchro plays pretty fast, and they'll. I facilitated a bit of a resonator engine, a small one, just to get some tuners on here so I can do synchro plays and stuff like that. Plus, red resonator in combo with Soldier Dragoons is just great, because you go red resonator, Soldier Dragoons, another Soldier Dragoons, another Soldier Dragon. Sorry, I don't know why I'm saying Dragoons, it's Dragon. And then Sniffer Dragon, and then you get a search off of that. So basically, by playing one card, you pulled out another. You basically just pulled out like a lot of advantage. They'll your deck is going to pay for whatever you're costing. Now, yeah, it's true. This deck can be stopped by hand traps, but who says you can't run hand traps in this deck? Even though I'm not. That's just my build. Literally, you could put hand traps in here to replace some of the tuners, like you put Ghost Ogre or Winter Chariot or whatever you want, because they're tuners as well, and they'll work well with this deck. He's in here for tuners, and also he's recursion. He can bring back your Soldier Dragoons and your Sniffer Dragons, and since they're level 2s or until, he's another play extender, because when you look like you've burnt out, he brings it back out. Tuningware is he's in a tech choice for a draw and a play extender, which is why I'm running him. You can run him at whatever, or not run him at all. That's fine. He's additional draw power, which just adds and boosts consistency at the moment. The next 3 are optional, but in a different way. I run the quote-unquote boss monster of the deck, main deck at least, is Metaltron 12, the True Draco Slayer. And the only reason he's in here is because he can become immune to things, and he's a big beater, and when he dies, I get a free something out of my extra deck. So pretty much you're intending for your opponent to kill this. Like, the quote-unquote boss monster of the deck, though, is just no. But if you feel like a better boss monster would fit in better, go ahead and slid it in. There's no problems. This is just in here because I like the extra deck explosions and stuff like that. And trust me, your opponent is going to be highly annoyed. especially when that thing hits though. I run a Destrudo in here, mainly because it's just good to run with the. It's just really good to run. He's good for those just necessary rank 7 level 7 plays. He can help you facilitate some FDKs, depending on what your extra deck is, of course. Because the FDKs of this deck are entirely dependent on extra decks. And my extra deck currently cannot facilitate the FDK, but you can do Nightmare, you can do several... you can do Bore Load and some other nifty little tricks and stuff like that. He's optional. You don't have to run him. If you feel like there's something better you can put. Again, he's one of the 3 optionals. Now, Lazion, the Time Lord, can be literally replaced with almost any of the useful Time Lords for... Like, my suggestion is having, like, a side deck with a couple of other... Time Lords to deal with whatever deck you find out yourself. So if he hits draw and burns for your opponent drawing, and if you find yourself against a deck that doesn't care about that too much, like Trickstar, you can just swap him out for a different Time Lord that would give you more bonus. And what he really does is he's another thing your opponent has to get through. And let me tell you this, your opponent's gonna, your opponent's going to hate trying to get through your deck. I can tell you this. It's fun. As far as that's it for monsters. Yeah, having at least one Time Lord in there, especially since he's going to shuffle him back into the deck, means you're always going to have some way to interfere with your opponent, which is going to be great. 1 soul charge, now into spells. We got 1 soul charge, 2 Mystical Space Typhoon, Dark Hole, and Backup Squad. And these should be self-explanatory, except for maybe Backup Squad, but I'll explain in just a moment. Soul Charge, just like I said, you are going to throw up stuff on your opponent. Your opponent... This is like a wild card. Your extra deck is literally a wild card like a Pandora's box. And so anything that can keep you going is just good. Mystical Space Typhoon, you can really run Twin Twisters if you wish. I'm just running Mystical Space Typhoon because I don't have enough copies. And Dark Hole because why not? You don't really care. You could go Regeki if you want, or some other spell if you wish. Now, for backup squad, the reason why I'm running this is because your opponent will probably definitely do damage to you in some form or fashion, and why not just for every 1,000 you take, you get to draw a card? So it's like, well, why not? Also, you can purposely swing into some of your opponent's monsters to gain that, which is great. It's a consistent booster, and your opponent's going to pop this at least, or no, because your opponent, anything to make your opponent waste resources is great. And also, Backup Squad is just, it's additional draw power, adding to the consistency of the deck. You can run more or less of this, whatever your fancy is, but I find he's pretty useful in my duels. The spell is very useful in my duels. Next up, we have the traps, which are... This one's done. This is Showdown of the Secret Skull Techniques. Yeah, you can read that right there. And practically, this is the trap version of Called to the Grave, or pretty much. When your opponent activates a spell, trap, or a monster effect with the same name as a card in the graveyard, negate the activation and destroy it. So if your opponent activates a hand trap, you can flip this as a counter, and since it's spell speed 3, your opponent can't respond to it, even if they have negates on the field, so you're just gonna stop their hand traps. It's just beautiful. It's slower, I admit, like you still have to set the card first, but I like it. It's very nifty because your opponent's not going to see a trap card that coming when you first know. Next up, battle traps for when your opponent decides to simply try to swing at your dragoons and sniffer dragons to, instead of trying to use card effects to get rid of them, and all that. You're like, oh, I'll just swing at your monster, and so you don't get all those monsters on board. Well, I have news for you. Magic Cylinders, again, cheese card, but I run it mainly because your opponent's gonna lose life points a lot against you, regardless of how well they're faring, because this deck is just gonna screw them. And then just to settle things even more, if they try to go and say, well, I'll just pop the back row. Well, your opponent's also going to be be wary of 3 Waking the Dragons. Like I said, since your extra deck is a wild card, literally you can explode off your opponent just trying to counter you. And that's what I like about this deck. Your opponent just doesn't know what to do with your against your deck. They can try one. They can try one strategy, but it's no guarantee that it'll even work. And because your deck is just going to adapt and then be a constant, pestilent, annoying, and your opponent's thinking, "Well, this is just a stall deck." No, this deck explodes and has explosive plays. And here's more recovery things in form of Call of the Haunted and Back to the Front. You notice there's a lot of trap cards in this deck, and the reason why is mainly because you are interfering with your opponent, and it's silly plays. Essentially, you don't care about your opponent's board too much. Like, you'll play through this deck is built to play through with whatever your opponent's throwing at you. Main deck wise, you're just gonna keep going though. If you want to play Solemn Great Brigade or whatever, feel free. I mean, the deck. If you want to add floodgates in, go ahead, because this deck is all about mainly throwing your opponent for a loop, and you'll most likely facilitate several wins on this. Extra deck wise, I can offer some suggestions to facilitate, like the Nightmare Engine, Borreload, Black Rose Dragon, heck, even you can bring out extra deck powerful extra deck monsters that Omega, Zeta. Yeah, you heard me. I said Zeta because he's actually coming out surprising. I'm not showing you my extra deck at the moment, mainly because, like I said, mine's incomplete at the moment, and it's not much to matter. Other interesting tech card choices are like this Celestial Double Star Shaman, which if you pull him off, you practically can get all your others. You can get all your dragons and stuff back from the grave and facilitate like a resurgence. And you can run. Literally, you can run you can run whatever you feel like. You can have Borreloads. Firewall Dragon, Topological Bomber Dragon, the Nightmare stuff. You could even technically do a cheese Quasar build with this if you build it right. And then you can also run extra deck monsters that literally your opponent won't see coming. Like, my extra deck currently has a Metalfoes monster in there, and there's not as you've seen, there's not a single Metalfoes thing in the main deck, because when your opponent hits a Waking of the Dragon, it's another target to just throw your opponent for a loop. You can also put like Ultimate Raid Raptor Ultimate Falcon in there for like whatever you want, mainly. Your extra deck is definitely key for this, so I guess a lockdown strategy might slow you down for a bit, but you should be able to still throw your opponent for a loop no matter what you're playing. And so Yeah, this I will admit it is a little bit stally, but stall is not the true depth of the deal. So, while it's called TikTok boom, it's mainly like you're only waiting for a very short time just to get the pieces, a little bit of the pieces ready, and then you're gonna just get just explode off of the plays just by facilitating a couple things. You don't care if your opponent kills your shit because you can get it all back anyway. And if you run Firewall Dragon, that's just another recursion. You can do some silly loops and stuff like that. This deck, I've literally faced some, several several powerful decks with this deck, and let me tell you, this deck is just the ruin. It can ruin the day of anyone. Like this, this deck. Even if you lose, your opponent does not feel happy winning. And with the new rule stuff, like I said, you can do the cheese shit stuff. I think technically its worst matchup is Trickstar, but that's just my build is the worst matchup is Trickstar. I'm pretty sure that you guys can come with more creative. They'll probably facilitate something that could even stand against Trickstar. But I hope you like my little deck here, and yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you.